Hey everyone, this is Charlie Shrem, and you're listening to Untold Stories. This is a show where we dive deep into the lives and personal histories of some of crypto's most influential leaders and find out how the crypto movement truly came to be. Let's dive in. This is episode 50. I'm so grateful and so thankful to you, my listeners, for doing this with me and for listening and for being a part of this process. Just so you know, this show directly and indirectly employs over 10 people that now, because you guys listen to the show, they have full-time jobs in our industry. So if we had done nothing else but given jobs for these people, we've been successful. On this episode, I talked to my good friend Peter McCormack, who is an inspiration for me. He runs one of the most successful podcasts in the world, not just Bitcoin related. He also runs one called Defiance and What Bitcoin Did. And when I listened to his show before I started my show, I said, I want to do what he's doing. And so I'm very grateful that Peter came on the show today. We talked about kind of why I started the show, why he started the show. We talked about the traumatic things that happened in both our lives, got emotional, and we talked about the state of Bitcoin and crypto in the past 10 years. And are we excited for 2020? I don't want to do a longer intro because I want to get right to it. Thank you so much again, and I'll talk to you guys right after the ads. I'm so honored that Untold Stories is sponsored by eToro. eToro is the smartest crypto trading platform and one of the largest in the world, with over $1 trillion in trading volume per year. What I really love about eToro is that the CEO has been around the Bitcoin space since 2012, so they really put their money where their mouths are. US customers, myself included, we can trade the most popular crypto assets, in fact, almost all of the ones that you want to trade, with low but transparent fees. So you actually know what you're paying for everything. And that's really important. So if you're not ready to trade yet, you can practice building your portfolio with the eToro $100,000 virtual trading feature. So you can create this whole portfolio without trading with any real money to see how you'll do. And you can learn all the different ins and outs without using any real money yet. And then once you're comfortable, you can enter the market and start buying and selling crypto for real. Best of all, one of my favorite features is that you can connect with 11 million other eToro traders in the world, myself included. And we can talk trading, charts, and all things crypto. So listen, head on over to eToro.com, links are in the show notes, and build your crypto portfolio the smart way. Untold Stories wouldn't be here without the amazing production company Blockworks Group. A few months ago, I approached Blockworks Group and I said, hey guys, I want to do a show, Untold Stories. Can we make it happen? And these guys are the only event and podcast production company that I trust. Really, the show is powered by them, and it wouldn't be here today without the amazing work of the Blockworks Group team. So for access to all the premier digital asset conferences and to check out their other podcasts in their network that they produce, check them out at blockworksgroup.io. That's blockworksgroup.io. I promise you will not be disappointed. This is a little bit of a different episode. I'm really excited, and we're here with Peter McCormack, who you all know and is a huge inspiration to me, the founder and host of What Bitcoin Did and Defiance podcast. Peter, thank you for coming on the show.
Anytime, man. You're a good friend now, Charlie. So anything you ever need from me is never a problem. And it's a bit weird you're saying that I'm an inspiration. I'm an inspiration to you because, you're somebody I've been aware of for a long time, right? I was aware of you, but way before you knew who I was. And somebody I looked out for. I was like, I got to meet that guy sometime. Got to get up. Got to hang out with that dude sometime. And then you got in touch with me, and you were like, "Do you want to come out to Florida, hang out?" And we made a show, probably one of my best shows. And here we are. So. Wow, thanks. I really appreciate this.
Thanks for doing it. And so this is like my episode 50. And when you came to Florida, I don't even think I had recorded one episode yet. Maybe I had recorded 2 or 3, and I was still unsure of doing the show, and it just kind of all happened very quickly. And here, I picked your brain a lot, and you gave me a lot of really good advice. I followed most of your advice, and it's worked. One piece of advice that you gave me was, I remember it was funny. You said how sometimes you'll get excited. You'll see the traffic and downloads start to rise after a big episode for like a week or two. And then it just goes back to where it was. And it still continues that slow growth. You know, it's disheartening sometimes where the growth of the show is so tied to the markets, at least. Do you see that too?
It's funny you should say that, because I'm going through the exact same experience now with Defiance. So I think when we'd met, I think you'd recorded a couple of shows because you told me about it. You said you'd recorded a couple, but I don't think you'd released any. And so that was one of the bits of advice I gave for you. And, I still get it with what Bitcoin did. I mean, if I look at the chart now in front of me, there's different periods of times. There's times where it's been flat and then times where it's been going up. I think I'm about now to hit another flat period. And I had it so my first few months were really flat, where I was doing like 5,000-6,000 a month, and then I had this spurt, and I got to like 25,000 a month, and then I got up to this point where I was doing about 100,000 a month, and then this year, from March until July, it was really kind of flat. It's like waving between 140 and 150, and then it shot up again, and I had this month where I did nearly 300,000. December dropped again, but I've got this feeling now I'm about to go through another flat period. I feel like it's almost like you go through different periods where you kind of level up, and as you level up, it could be in terms of your guest or the type of show you make. And then a bunch of new people find out about you, and then it kind of levels out again. I think my Bitcoin show is going to go through a flat period. I'm talk to you about what's going to happen next year as well, the things. Well, this year now, the plans I've got, but I'm going through it all with Defiance now, right? I've got really great downloads of what Bitcoin did, and I'm releasing these shows on Defiance, and I'm like, this show's amazing. This thing, I flew out to Bolivia. I've done all this research, and 2,000 people have listened to it. So I'm like, oh. So yeah, I know exactly what you're going through, buddy.
And you've been having these unbelievable guests on your new podcast. Where do you find them? I know you should be asking me questions, but now I'm interested. It's so cool to see you branching off into something non-Bitcoin related. How do you find these guests? And I mean, how are you building the format of that new show?
Well, that's cool. Look, we can go back and forth on this because I've got questions for you as well. And, I want to find out your experience, but they come in a range of ways. I get a lot of people who come directly to me, and I have to kind of filter through and think, do I want that as an interesting story? Sometimes is it relevant in the news? So I go and find somebody. So right now, obviously, what's going on in Iran and Iraq is highly relevant, and I'm looking for the angle for me to cover that. I have a strong relationship with Alex Gladstein at the Human Rights Foundation. He's recommended people to me. So it's just a range of things. And it was just, to begin with, just about getting out a bunch of shows. I am now what I want to do over the next month, say with Defiance, I want to do a bit of a UK focus. So I've got some ideas of things I want to cover. I really want to cover what's going on with knife crime here. It can be a range of things. I actually have in front of me, Charlie, on my browser, I have this little folder in the shortcuts which says ideas. And in there's a folder for Defiance and a folder for what Bitcoin did. And you might enjoy this, but whenever something comes up on Twitter or on the news and I think that's something I want to target, I just drag the link in the folder. So I kind of had this kind of directory of different guests or topics I want to cover. But it depends. I mean, also, like I said, it depends on the show. With the Bitcoin show right now, I'm doing my beginner's guide, right? So I'm pulling together, I've got 15 interviews planned, which is ideally going to serve as a starting point. If you, Charlie, you have somebody who wants to get into Bitcoin, you don't know, where to recommend them. Hopefully you can say, well, everyone goes to Lop's website, which you should do. But, Pete created these 15 interviews which are all about getting you into Bitcoin. It will explain, why Bitcoin's important, how it works, how you buy it, all those things you need to just kind of embed yourself. But yeah, and it's just there's no set pattern. There's just a bunch of techniques I have. I mean, how about you? How are you choosing your guests?
It's very interesting how I choose my guests. So initially, I just took a blank spreadsheet, and I just kind of started writing down names. And I came out with a bunch of names, and I chose the first 5 people. I said, these are people that I kind of already know their stories a little bit, and people that I'm close to and I already have good vibes with. And so that's how originally I got it. And now I almost go back in time. So history is constantly being made. My show's a little bit different. I'm trying to see myself as this more crypto historian now, because I've lived it, most of it. And I lived it as a young kid when you're a sponge. I wasn't that young, but I was like, 19, 20, 21 when I first got into it. So I was learning, grasping, taking a lot in. And so I remember a lot. I remember a lot of the people. And so what I'm trying to do is remind and entertain people. And so finding those guests that have the great stories. And then what ends up happening is a lot of my guests will make connections and bring up other guests in other stories. So it's like someone's like, yeah, I remember Vitalik was pitching Ethereum to me while we were sitting in a hot tub together. I'm like, wait, you were sitting in a hot tub with Vitalik? I need to like get Vitalik on the show before I can even make your episode public, because I can't, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like I can't let him not have his side of the take. So I'm finding that, and a lot of people have very strong opinions and sides of how things went down. Luckily, I'm able to fact check because I either was there or I know people that were there. So I'm kind of building this whole audio story of the early days of Bitcoin, and then as Bitcoin opened up into crypto. So for those who listen to the show, they know that I'm very careful when I use the word Bitcoin. I'm very careful when I use the word blockchain and crypto, because I'm not going to talk about an early crypto story of 2011 when the word crypto never fucking existed until 2014.
Yeah. Have you got a favorite show you've made? Have you got anything that like really stood out?
It's hard to like think off the back, but actually the one I just released on Tuesday with Bill from Bittrex was so good because he had such funny stories. I love the stories. I love the episodes when people remind me of things that I forgot about. It's like, hey, Charlie, remember when we were sitting in that restaurant in Argentina and we wanted to start a Bitcoin association? I'm like, no, I don't remember that. And then I'll ask Courtney later and she'll be like, yeah, I was there. Like, oh, okay. So like when people remind me of things, this has been such a memory jog for me doing this show. And also I like shows where people tell me about what people were thinking of me during certain times. So I'll interview people and say, like, what was going on in 2014 and 2015 during my arrest, or what happened? So I have this huge gap, like from I have like a year gap from 2015 to like early 2016. And like what I'm learning is nothing actually like happened during that year. It was a very quiet, like depressing bear market. But the year before that was a very quiet and depressing bear market too. So I'm like trying to figure out, that was a long ass bear market, the 2014 to 2016. But I also like how I kind of don't talk about the price on the show ever, except for right now.
Do you know what, dude? I've stopped talking about the price, but I think one of those things is even more so for you. I mean, what were you? Were you like a 2011 guy? Remind me.
Yes.
Yeah. So right. So I came in just into 2016. So say it's been 3 years, but let's talk about just the last year only, right? We've had another long ass bear market. And, I try and think over the last year, and so much has happened in the space of a year. So like I've done 120 shows just on Bitcoin alone in the last year. So if I go back to the start of last year, it was the first show was episode 60. Right, episode 60, and I'm now on like 182. I'm like, God, what have I covered? And then I realized, like in there, I've done a whole month of lightning shows. I did my Mount Gox series, right? And then I've been all to different places. I've been to Florida and hung out with you. I've been to Taiwan. I've been to Hong Kong. I've been out to the States like 20 times. I've been out to South America. And do you know what? I doubt I could remember all of it. I wish in some ways I was a vlogger and have it all journaled, because so much has happened. So God knows how you, Charlie, would remember the last 9 years, because you've been through infinitely more experiences and met so many people. So I think trying to keep track of all that, it's got to be really hard.
It's hard, and you're right. And so you look at, if I was there, and I've so much documentation, just the emails I read and things like that. And if I'm forgetting those early days, then most people are forgetting or forgot those days. My biggest concern, and I've been tweeting about it lately, is whitewashing, and I'll kind of get into that, why I think that's a concern in a minute. Because, and I hate to say it, and then dude, like crypto media is going to come after me when I say this, but I feel like crypto media has gotten less independent. And when CoinDesk had first launched, CoinDesk wasn't seen as like a business type of site when Pete Rizzo was part of the founding team. It was more of like, hey, there's a need for a crypto reporting site, somewhere where we can report on news. Let's create one for the market. But then now it's not just CoinDesk, but kind of all of them have become this different type of animal. And I think it's a problem of the larger media. We just don't trust it. But what I've learned about podcasts, and now I understand, you keep reading articles that podcast growth is just growing exponentially and everyone's listening to podcasts. And before I started doing a show, I did listen to some, but I didn't really listen to a lot of them. And I never understood why, but now I understand why. So the reason I think podcast growth is going to continue to grow is that you, Peter, and me, Charlie, we control and are part of the process from show, from the beginning of like conception to creation to production to distribution. And then we actually can talk to our listeners. And what's crazy is that you probably have, I have checked the data, but I could say this, you have more listeners per episode than probably some TV shows that are on like major networks. Like maybe some late night shows or whatever. Like, but you know what I mean? So
3 a.m.
What is that? Yeah. Well, what does that tell you? But it's growing. Joe Rogan has more listeners, more downloads than mainstream TV shows. What does that tell you about the world that we live in? But it's all long form content, right? So the media is telling us that our brains are being fried. We're all idiots. We can't stand more than 2 minutes of content. TikTok is only 30 seconds, right? I mean, so, but then you have you put out, I just listened to your Quadriga episode. It was like super long. And I listened to the whole thing. So people are listening to long form. I'm surprised when not surprised, but people are like, oh yeah, at minute 62, you said this. I'm like, dude, you fucking listened for 62 minutes?
Well, look, I'll tell you what's going on. Because I've kind of thought about it a lot as well myself, and I think there's a few things going on here. And I don't know if you saw the deck. For a moment I thought of raising money and creating a podcast company, and I've put that idea.
I remember you were talking about it when you showed me the deck.
Yeah, and I don't think I want to do it actually because. And I can talk about that later, but I looked into it, and what I think's going on, Charlie, there's a couple of things. So, firstly, there's multiple media types. So let's go with online, kind of web media. So the problem we've got with web media is that it's all clickbaity because it's highly competitive. Banner ads don't really work, right? They just don't fucking work. I know the data from when I worked in the industry. So they've got to get as many clicks as they can to get as many views as they can. And therefore, they have to be a bit clickbaity. And also, what ends up happening is most media, especially with news, they then end up aligning to one bias. They're either left or right wing, and they know their audience and they appeal to their audience. It's why Fox News does so well. It's fucking garbage, right? But it does really well. And it's not garbage because they don't have good journalists. It's just garbage because they're never impartial. And I'll add something else to that, actually. I recorded an interview with Alex Gladstein for the Human Rights Foundation. And since I've been doing Defiance, what I said to him is like, one of the most difficult problems I've got at the moment is finding the truth in news. So when I went out to Bolivia to report on what happened with Evo Morales, there are two very clear narratives going on. One is that he was a great socialist left-wing leader, came into power, did some amazing things, but started going down the slippery slope of kind of like the socialist authoritarian playbook, right? He started to want to grab more power. They had a 2-term limit. He changed the constitution for a 3rd term. Then he went through the judiciary to get a 4th term. People protested. He ended up getting kicked out. So either he is just some kind of like hero who's being, kicked out via a coup, or he's some kind of authoritarian. And that's the two narratives. And when you talk to anyone, Charlie, they're one or the other. They're like, he's authoritarian. We had a vote. He lost or he rigged the votes. Or it's like, no, he's a hero. This is a coup. And actually, the truth is, it's somewhere in the middle. Like when I say in the middle, I say it's somewhere between that. Now, it could be very close to one side or very close to the other, but there's definitely truths on both sides. And very little news these days is people going in and finding those truths and going, right, So this is the current state. These are the things that people are arguing over. This is this group's opinion. This is that group's opinion. This is the potential to solve it. No, nobody's doing that. So that's one of the problems that you're finding with news now. It's becoming so political, and so people are trying to make things that aren't binary. So that's the problem you got with the mainstream news. Then you got the problem that people are going on Twitter and they're just arguing. When I'm guilty myself, Charlie, but I don't argue.
We all do it.
Yeah, we all do it, but I don't argue with anyone on a podcast. So the format for debates there's not really good. I tell you why podcasts are working. They're working for a couple of reasons. I think firstly they use up dead time. So I listen to podcasts when I'm at the gym, when I'm running, or when I'm in the car. Dead time where I'm just like I've got an hour, 2 hours, and I can just kind of embed myself into something, and that's really cool. And what you're also finding that they're not expensive to produce, right? I am sat here in my home office, Charlie, with my $400 mic, with my $600 Zoom plugged into my laptop. I mean, strictly speaking, I mean, I could do this with a phone, but for under $1,000, you can start producing a show. You can release that out on all the different platforms. And once you get a certain audience size, you can get sponsors. Like you've got sponsors now. I've got sponsors. Yeah, I mean, I'm not showing off here because I share my numbers, but like I'm doing like some months $30,000 to $40,000, right? And that's because people trust you, and they trust that you're willing to be impartial, and that you're.
But you have a well-produced show.
Yeah,
you produce your show like NPR, kind of like how I like to produce my show. Like you produce your show like a BBC radio program, not to compare you to the BBC, but. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I guess people won't listen to a show that if it's recorded on a phone, or maybe they will. And a lot of celebrities put out podcasts, and they're just terrible. I don't like them.
Yeah, but you know why?
Because they have audience. They need a monetization avenue.
But they're terrible for a couple of reasons. Well, firstly, usually they're just doing it for the sake of it, right? They're just doing it because someone said, "Oh, you can do this and make some money. You've got an audience." And I reckon most of them don't have the enthusiasm. They check in and check out. Whereas I don't know how much time you spend with Charlie, but this is all I fucking do, right? I get up and that's all I think about all day. I'll record 1 or 2 interviews a day. I'm prepping for them. I'm like, that's all I do, and I care about it. So
this has become my full-time job.
There you go, buddy.
I said it the other day. It's like exhausting, but it's amazing. I love it. I love having a full-time job again. Dude. I really do. I swore off it. But this is it, and it's great.
This is the favorite job I've ever had.
Yeah. It definitely is.
But so what I think is going on is that, someone like Rogan, the reason people like Rogan is like, he doesn't give a fuck, right? He says what he wants. He gives his opinion. He will go on. He will say, yeah, I hunt. I do DMT. I'm an MMA commentator. I don't like some of this trans stuff that's going on, and he will criticize both the left and the right. And you're like, I trust this guy. Whereas if you stick on Fox News, it's going to be very, very right wing. You stick on MSNBC, it's going to be very, very left wing, and you just don't trust them anymore. And so what ends up happening is someone like Rogan ends up getting a bigger audience, and then also the advertisers are like, well, people like him and they trust him. I'm going to spend money with him. So I think what podcasting is nothing more than the growth of more authentic and trusted media.
Joe Rogan, you and me all have something in common, that we've been through very traumatic things in our life. And I think that's one of the reasons we're able to have very strong opinions about something and frankly not give a fuck, because of life experiences that we have. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do actually. I tell you, it's a funny thing because you've been very transparent about what you've been through. And I mean, when I was with you, it was like you were fully open, dude. You cards on the table. It was quite emotional, and especially with Courtney, it was very emotional. Like some of the things that came out,
and we weren't even drinking.
No, we weren't. It was the morning, but you weren't afraid to tell that story, right? And so, what I think when people are like that, they become likable. I've never hidden away from my addictions, my failures, and it's like.
People can't troll you on it when you talk about it yourself. They can't make fun of you about it.
Well, they try. I mean, come on. Like, I've seen the people.
No, they can try, but it shouldn't, or it doesn't, or maybe it does a little bit. To me, it does sometimes, but it doesn't get to you. But I mean, without naming names, you see people who are just crazy, crazy trolls on Twitter, like super trolls. And then one little meme gets made and they're like all up in arms, crying, and like because they can't dish it. And I think I maybe have said this on your show. We have to go back and check, but I think I may have told you you're asking about prison, and I said, the trolls in real life on crypto Twitter are nothing compared to the trolls in prison. Because in the prison that I was in, there's no violence, so people have this insane passive aggressiveness and a need to be aggressive without the use of violence. So I feel like trolling was invented in federal prison. And I had to condition myself so that from the moment I wake up in jail to the moment you go to bed, you are on constant alert. You know what prison taught me?
Yo.
Situational awareness. What is situational awareness? It's something they teach you in the CIA. When you walk into a room, and actually my wife is very good at it too. When you walk into a room, and I implore everyone, if there's a skill that you want to learn in your life, go to like some sort of training, and don't just Google it. Like go to some sort of training or life experience to learn how to do this. When you walk into a room, any action that you take or any action that someone else takes, how will that affect the rest of the room? So do this. Walk into a coffee shop and say, if that guy threw a cupcake at the other guy, what would happen in the room? Situational awareness is so important in life.
Yeah, the trolling thing itself is funny as well. Like I support trolling. I think it should exist. Ricky Gervais.
100%.
Ricky Gervais the other night, right, was brilliant. His trolling of the megastars of Hollywood is fantastic. And he's right, okay. And you can support trolling, and at the same time, you can be honest in that it gets to you yourself. Like I appreciate that I've been trolled at times because I've done some cringy as fuck things or got some things wrong. We all do, right? You put yourself out there, you're gonna make a misstep, and some of the trolling has made me really think. I don't mind naming names. That carbon-based prick, right? At the time when he was going for me a few times, like. It was helpful. That's the weird thing. It was helpful, Charlie. It made me think. God, am I just putting out absolute bloody nonsense here? And it also, when he was trolling other people and I saw some, I was like, yeah, he's got a point. He's really got a point. So I actually think the trolling's useful. And I think at the same time, you're allowed to be honest and say it gets to you. Like if you have a bad day, like I've seen some people say some atrocious things to you, like call you specific. I mean, I can't remember I'd have to go back and check, but like you're fucking
no, it happens.
You're a criminal, or you're this, or you're that, or that's why you went to jail.
I am a criminal.
Well, I thought you're not anymore.
No, I mean, like I'm not, but like technically, legally, like I'm a felon, right?
Yeah.
So if people call me a convicted felon, like, okay, but that's not wrong. So you call me that all you want. I don't, I committed a crime, but I also serve my time.
Yeah.
So when you call me a felon, or you call, that to me is okay. Yes, I am, but I also serve my time. But I almost prefer that than when people minimize.
You told me that before.
I prefer that when, I don't like it when people minimize the crime, and people have to learn from it. Compliance is a very important factor in our industry.
But I still imagine, despite you haven't done your time and being proud that you did that, you worked it, right?
I still can't believe I fucking did that time, though.
Yeah, look, dude, we're going to get onto that. But I imagine still, like, if you had a day with a bunch of people throwing that at you, does it get to you? Does it ever, do you ever fuck, I just don't want to hear this anymore?
Yeah. I just came back from a vacation, and I like to not talk about crypto, when I'm on vacation. I like to talk about Bitcoin. I don't like to talk about really any of these topics, but it does get old. I do like telling, I like telling prison stories, but I could tell that when I'm telling them, I look at Courtney, she's kind of like over it too. Mm-hmm. It is therapeutic, but I think there is something called a therapeutic process. And now 3 years on, the therapeutic process of telling the prison stories is kind of coming to an end. Wow. And so now maybe I'm at the next wave of it. And you were part of the therapeutic process of me telling the stories.
Well, that's good.
So maybe I'm moving on from that now. I don't know.
Well, look, I mean, again, we're going to come on to that because in different ways, and I'm not equalizing it, but it was a sentence for you both, just in different ways, right? You were sentenced and had to go to jail, go to prison, where she was sentenced and having to be away from you and waiting for you. That was one of the things I noticed when I was with you. It was a sentence for both of you, just in different ways. But the thing, so the point I was trying to make is that For example, I've talked about the breakup of my marriage, right? I don't mind telling the story, but it's just a bit fucking tiring. You go online and somebody's like, well, that's where your fucking wife left you. And it's just like, yes, I support your right to free speech and trolling. It doesn't mean you aren't hitting a nerve, because a breakup of a marriage is crap. You go through a few years of hell. You've got to go through some real difficulties with your children, taking them through that. So I support people's right to troll and free speech, and at the same time can say so. So I will say something like Carbon Base. I support his right to troll, and at the same time, I think he's an absolute prick for some of the things he says to people. It's a bit unnecessary. And
If you can't stand the heat, should you stay out of the kitchen?
yeah, maybe, but I think also you just you I think you can. I think there's different types of trolling, and you can say, there is trolling when somebody's done something a bit cringy or done a bit stupid, and they deserve it, like that Hollywood got the other night. And then there's trolling, which is just being a dick to someone for no reason. Like you're just trying to make them feel like shit, and for what purpose? Like,
yeah. So
what are
you
you
almost
achieving?
have to you almost have to say to yourself, if I met this person tomorrow, I'll give you a story. Actually, untold. It may be an untold story. I'll give you a story. So last year, I was on my way. I was in the Uber, and I was with a bunch of Bitcoiners, and I was in a chat room, and I'm in the Uber on the way to like a Bitcoin dinner after Bitcoin Miami. And I'll tell you and I was in the chat room arguing with Mate Toke, who runs Bitcoin.com. Are you familiar with Mate?
I know of him.
Okay, so he used to run another news site, Bitcoinist. He had started, and before he was I owe him a lot of debt because when I was in prison, he actually sent me money and wrote me letters.
Wow.
And phenomenal guy, yeah, like phenomenal, just a good person. But unfortunately, and I don't care, he's listening to the show. Mate has been, brainwashed. I feel like by the whole Bcash, Roger Ver, Bitcoin.com stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a shame because it's made him a hostile person. So I don't care who you are, what you believe in. I have friends who believe that Bitcoin Cash is the end all be all. And I don't, you know what it is? Like, I won't do business with you. I won't really, whatever it is, I won't let you sponsor the show. But if we're having dinner, I'm not going to like argue with you. We're just going to be friends and let's have a great steak together. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, because personally, that's who they are. So here we are in this chat room and we're like arguing. Like it got really bad. And I wasn't the protagonist in the argument. It was a bunch of other people. And it was like, it got really heated. Like people were calling him out and everything like that. And then we got to the dinner and no one was there. Like barely anyone was there except for him. He was there and I didn't know he was going to be there. And here we are arguing on our phone and I felt my stomach drop and I felt like shit. And I said, wow, like if I feel like shit because I'm arguing in a chat room, but I can't face this person in real life, what does that say about me? And I still couldn't come to terms with how I felt. Like if that happened to you, how would you feel?
Well, so one of the interesting things was, I get trolled quite a bit by some of the hardcore Bitcoiners, like the real, like heavy Bitcoin plebs, whatever they stupid name want to give themselves. And I get it, right? They want everyone to be the most Bitcoin they can. And when I'm there going, I'm not running a node. I don't understand it. It's too complicated. Yeah, fuck off. They get annoyed with me. Now, ignoring the fact they don't understand why I'm saying that and what I'm doing, I actually support their right to troll me and give me shit. It's by being trolled in certain ways like that, it makes me reconsider. And that's really cool. I mean, some go too far, but I actually met one of them in real life in, I think I was in Munich, and a group of people, and he started then trolling me in person. I was like, hey, dude, come on, man. Like, this isn't Twitter. And he was just really going at me and like losing his shit with me to the point where I was like, listen, like, I'm just going to go. I'm going to go back to my hotel and I'm going to get a flight and go home tomorrow. I don't want to be at this conference, don't want anything to do with it. And it was this weird thing whereby I was like, I've sat there arguing and being a dick on Twitter myself. But when it got into the real world, I was like, well, this is weird. What the hell's going on here? And I didn't want to be part of it. And I think that's the thing. I think most of these, do you know what would be great? Do you know what Twitter should do? They should put a little phone icon in the threads, and when a conversation is getting heated, like people can choose to just press that and then have a phone call. And do you know what? They'll resolve it really quickly. I reckon most of the things will end up not becoming an argument. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I just I just can't fathom kind of like how 2019 ended. I guess that's kind of like where my head's at right now.
Gosh, I don't know, man. Different ways for different people. I had a meltdown. I was in Uruguay having a meltdown.
When? In New Year's?
No, like just before New Year's. Just before New Year's. It's just all to do with the trolling stuff. Like, and I'm to blame for a lot of it myself. But you know, it's a long year, a lot of travel, a lot of hard work. Stuff gets to you, man. What do you mean though? What do you mean by like you're not sure how it ended?
My 2019 started off very, very tough.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I didn't have the show, and I was still so. My 2019 started off where had a year left of probation, and I was in like the midst. I was like 3 months in of the Winklevoss Shrem whole litigation,
Oh yeah.
and that took a very, very big toll on me because I was trying to fly under the radar for 2 years and just kind of just chill out and go through my 3-year probation. And they had asked for the same judge. And so it was like just bringing everything back out again. And it was like, I'm back in that same courtroom I was 5 years ago. And it was like the PTSD all over again. And here I am, like, why am I standing in front of this judge? I've already served my time. And thankfully, with the most amazing lawyers, Brian Klein, like I owe Team Shrem at Baker Marquardt my life. Best lawyers ever. That litigation ended the best way I could have thought it was going to end. Like, honestly, I was in tears when that litigation was over because of how it ended. And so that kind of ended mid 2019. I'm so honored that Untold Stories is sponsored by eToro. eToro is the smartest crypto trading platform and one of the largest in the world with over $1 trillion in trading volume per year. What I really love about eToro is that the CEO has been around the Bitcoin space since 2012, so they really put their money where their mouths are. US customers, myself included, we can trade the most popular crypto assets, in fact, almost all of the ones that you want to trade, with low but transparent fees. So you actually know what you're paying for everything. And that's really important. So if you're not ready to trade yet, you can practice building your portfolio with the eToro $100,000 virtual trading feature. So you can create this whole portfolio without trading with any real money to see how you'll do. And you can learn all the different ins and outs without using any real money yet. And then once you're comfortable, you can enter the market and start buying and selling crypto for real. Best of all, one of my favorite features is that you can connect with 11 million other eToro traders in the world, myself included, and we can talk trading, charts, and all things crypto. So listen, head on over to eToro.com, links are in the show notes, and build your crypto portfolio the smart way. The reason I started this show and I don't know if I've really said this before, was I was going through a very, very bad meltdown, same like you, during this litigation, and I was sitting in therapy, and my therapist had said, Charlie, you need to like do something. You need to like do something. You have too much free time and you're going crazy. And so this podcast was actually his idea.
Amazing.
And if it wasn't for him, if it wasn't for this whole thing, this show would have never started. But yeah, so that's kind of like when bad things happen to you, so many good things happen at the same time. And I'm so grateful for everyone who supported me for this show.
Look, I get that, man. Honestly, prior to me doing a podcast, like I've told you the story. I mean, we hung out. I told you, my marriage broke up, my company collapsed. I nearly lost my house. Like in the space of, I went from like feeling like I had everything, then everything collapsed in the space of about 6 months. Ended up a drug addict, and then everything was gone. I was like, what the hell am I going to do with my life? How am I going to figure this out? And I just fell into this podcast, and it's like a new direction. It's just, if anyone comes out and says, "Oh, I've been thinking of doing a podcast," I'm not sure. Like there are so many others. I'm like, just fucking do it. It doesn't matter. It's like writing a blog. It doesn't matter whether you've got one reader, one listener, or 10,000, 100,000. I mean, it does if you want to make money, but I'm just saying you get so much out of it. I didn't make any money on this for a year, and I was loving it. Just the process of trying to better yourself with something, learn new subjects, improve a skill, like build something. I mean, I've absolutely loved it. I mean, look, you've done what, 50 interviews now?
Yeah. This is episode
50
50.
interviews. Right. Had you ever interviewed anyone before you did the first one?
Never. And in fact, my first one was so bad that my producers were like debating whether to continue the show. And so the first, I actually never released my first one. It was like so bad because I got really curious about the guy's background, like non-crypto related. We ended up spending like 2 hours talking about that, and we didn't talk about Bitcoin at all.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, I can't listen to my first one. I tried. It was with Luke Martin because we did another one recently. Weird thing. I ended up in I ended up in Indianapolis 2 years to the day after we recorded our first one. So we did another one. I couldn't go back and listen to it. I tried. It was so cringy. I hated it. But so you've done 50 now. So what are the things you've learned, like in making a show, in recording an interview, in interviewing people? Like, what are the things you found?
I found that production is a lot of fun. I really enjoy the production process of like writing a show and coming up with the guest and then doing the research before kind of coming to the studio here. I'm a little bit different than you. I prefer in-person interviews. I like being in the studio. But what I've learned is that people are fucking brilliant in this space. And I just tweeted this the other day, but we really are in an industry that brings together very, very brilliant minds. But what I will say is that our social skills have not gotten better in those years. Like, we're still a bunch of like socially awkward people. And so it's nice to see guests coming out of their shell. And so I just recorded with someone 2 months ago, and the first 10 minutes was him yelling at me. And Wayne, who sits on the other side of the glass, is like, why is this guy yelling at you? But I wasn't asking like hostile questions, but I was asking questions. They weren't like wrong questions. Like, why did you start this project? Oh, I didn't start this project. The foundation started this project, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh my God. Like, this is not a news show. This is not a gotcha. This is entertainment. People are listening to this at the gym. This is supposed to be fun. And so we did this show and it was like pulling teeth. And then he actually had emailed me and he's like, can we re-record? And I said, absolutely. And so we redid that. It was a completely different, better episode. I think that in our industry, people are constantly on edge, but at the same time, I could understand why, right? Like, look at where we are. We've definitely mainstreamed more. It's a slow process, but we've definitely mainstreamed. You look at CES this year. CES had a digital money whole track. So now that we have a track at CES, which is the largest consumer electronics show in the world, now that we have one, what does that tell you about our industry, right?
Yeah, I think maybe one of the things that is a bit different for you is because I'm sticking just with Bitcoin right now, and I find that Bitcoiners they're kind of on the same mission together. They're all kind of united. There are people who own altcoins who also own Bitcoin, but Bitcoiners themselves are pretty united in terms of direction. They might argue over like certain points, but they're pretty united. Whereas in crypto, you've got Bitcoin v crypto, you've got Bitcoin v Ethereum, you've got Ethereum against Tron. And also I think the crypto side has struggled a lot more. The last year was actually brilliant for Bitcoin. Despite still being in apparently a bear market, the price doubled from the start of the year, from the start of 2019 to the end of 2019. We've got some great companies building out, lots of like really positive things happening. So I think it was a good year that felt it sometimes like it wasn't because of all the misery of all the shitcoin traders who are like, oh, alt season's about to start.
I've still not seen a metric that I really want to see. I want to see like a metric of job creation. I think that's
interesting.
It's like, I wish more of our companies, and I guess some do, some don't. Maybe someone can amalgamate the data together, and I would venture to say that job creation is an amazing metrics to see. What do I love about doing this show? The best thing that I sleep at night is that this show is now a profitable business that pays salaries of people. I have a
Nice.
bunch of people that work directly or indirectly for this show. So over 75% of the sponsorship money that comes in goes to pay other people, not myself.
Nice.
People don't realize that, oh yeah, you sponsor. No, most of the money goes to pay for production. And that's what I really love about this show. One of my favorite things is that's local here in Florida. I've given back to a community that has given so much to me over the years. And so that is really nice. And if anything, having a show that can support itself. So our industry in the past year, I think we've amalgamated in a way where like the fat has been skimmed and cut off, and we've become leaner. So, would you agree or disagree when I would say that 2019 was the year of becoming leaner? I think all of our companies, how many companies have restructured but are still around now? Like we become a leaner industry. And that's a very, very good thing.
It's like the post.com crash. It's kind of like, okay, now you got to prove yourself. Now you got to drive revenue. Now you've got to have positive metrics. And that's why in some ways I think it's probably been a good year for Bitcoin. I mean, I look at companies, I think that job creation is an interesting one. And I also think like money raised by Bitcoin companies is interesting because essentially they're usually raising for equity, not some bullshit token. So, and I'll look at my sponsors. I think, I can't remember, did BlockFi have 2 rounds last year, but they raised money, right? And they're growing. Their team is so much bigger than it was when I first started with them. And I look at Kraken are recruiting good people. The company Dropbit I work with, they're doing really well. Like all my sponsors, sorry to give my sponsors a shout, but it's just because I'm really aware of these companies. They're all growing and they're doing super well, but they're all Bitcoin companies, right? And I then kind of try and look at the crypto companies, and all I see is, problems with adoption. I see arguments about use cases. I see pivot after pivot, and I just think it kind of makes me even more focused on Bitcoin and given less of a shit about crypto. So in terms of being leaner, I think it's natural. I think they have to be. I think over the next year. I think this year, I tell you what I think is going to happen this year. I think it's going to be a really good year for Bitcoin again. I think it's going to be a terrible year for crypto because I think what's
Peter,
go on.
No, sorry, let you finish your statement.
Well, so what I think 2020 is going to be a continuation of 2019 in that what I think is that a lot of crypto is going to exit back into Bitcoin. I think you're going to see a lot of people do like what I did, which is
I think it's happening.
Yeah, and I think people who were crypto people are going to become more Bitcoin people, and I think a lot more focus is going to go back into Bitcoin, and that's my hope and that's my expectation. I could be wrong, but what I see nothing but positive metrics for Bitcoin, whereas I'm yet to see. I see some DeFi stuff come out that looks impressive, and then it always tends to get debunked. But I just think it's going to be another really great year for Bitcoin.
You talked earlier about like not being black and white, and so your example of Evo Morales was really a good one. And so, taking that same analogy, you've made it a point to where like you only allow Bitcoin companies to sponsor you. And you took a hit when you did that, and it was difficult for a while, and then you built up, and you had more sponsors. Mm-hmm. I mean, though, but where is so I guess you drew your own line, and you said I'm only going to be working with Bitcoin companies, but at the same time, some of your companies still work with and make money off of other altcoins like Kraken, for example. But that's not really my question. Is I'm trying to like have my cake and eat it too. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I'm trying to like be the judge and jury in when I pick my own, when I allow a sponsor or don't allow a sponsor. So, but at the same time, like I don't give a shit, right? So BitPay is one of my sponsors, and listen, you could say whatever you want about BitPay, but they are one of the first, oldest, and longest companies in the space, and I feel like. And I've personally been using their products since 2012. And so, I guess where is the line? And so Like, can I be the judge and jury and saying like, oh, I think that company is actually a scam, but here's another company that, yeah, they have a token, but I don't think that they're frauds. I think that they have good intentions and they're actually building a really, really good project. Maybe that their token doesn't need to be, but hey, they actually didn't do an ICO. Can I be that judge and jury, or should I be more of like hard ass? And I don't feel like it's my job to like tell other companies or tell other people what they should and shouldn't do in the space, I guess.
Yeah, these are all really good points, are really good questions and things I've wrestled with. So I'll tell you what I'll do. So it's a Bitcoin show now. It was a crypto show. It's a Bitcoin show now. So I only want Bitcoin companies to sponsor me. Now, if your Bitcoin company also does stuff with tokens, fine. That's your choice. As long as you're not breaking the law, I don't care. Like, I want to work with companies that deal with Bitcoin. I think the Bitcoin purity test to only, so if I could only deal with companies that only dealt in Bitcoin and didn't cover any tokens and were only the Bitcoin companies that the real Bitcoiners liked, I wouldn't be making enough money to be able to do what I'm doing now. What happens is, say I invoice $40,000, about 8 to 9,000 goes purely on staffing and like equipment and licenses cost. And then most months I'm traveling, so another $10,000 to $15,000 goes on travel, hotels, food, etc. while I'm away. It gets eaten up pretty quickly, but it enables me to get around the world to meet and do all these amazing interviews. Now, I'm not going to do any work with a token company because I don't want the money that much. But you've got to look at a company like Kraken. Absolutely support what they do. If they don't want to list tokens and be Bitcoin only, then they are putting themselves in a very anti-competitive position, whereby all their competitors pretty much are going to be trading tokens. And also, I don't feel like I have the moral authority over what is right or wrong. Like, I've got no interest in tokens or altcoins. I don't feel like I have the technical or moral authority to say whether they won't be a success or whether they should exist or not. Yeah, something like Hex by Richard Hart, that was a scam. Okay, I want nothing to do with that. If you look at someone like Brave, such a scam. We'll come to that. You look at someone like Brave, right? I don't agree with the token. I wish Brendan Eich had done it with Bitcoin. I understand his arguments not to, but is it an outright, absolute 100% scam?
That's a great example, though. Brave is a great example, though. Like, I would wrestle with that if they came to me and said, "Hey, we want to advertise."
See, I would be a no if it was for the basic attention token. If it was for the well, no,
what if it was for the browser?
I use the browser. I think a lot of people who don't like the token use the browser. So I wouldn't have a problem with that. I just couldn't support the token because I think ultimately the token will die. I don't think they need the token. I think they could have probably have done it in a different way. I don't even think they needed a blockchain, to be honest, to do that. I mean, my son trades things on FIFA with FIFA points that's done probably in some kind of database. So I don't think that was needed. But I think it's important to separate what is a scam from a misguided idea to whatever. So what I decide is, because I can't hold the legal or moral authority or technical authority in any of these projects. I can express my doubts, but because I can't do it, I'm not going to sit there and spend all day, every day, like some people do, saying you're all scammers. Everyone who uses a scammer if it's not Bitcoin. I'm not going to do that. I'm not Giacomo. I don't have his way of thinking and skills. So as long as you're a company that primarily deals in Bitcoin, then I'll work with you, because you are pushing forward Bitcoin. So
do you look at the executives? Like, what do they tweet? What do they say? Who do they associate with?
So I think about stuff like that. Yeah, I do. So I'm really happy with Zach Prince. I think he's a great guy, and I've got to know Flory as well over at BlockFi.
Jesse from Kraken, of course, one of my hero, and we don't use that word lightly.
A good fucking guy, and I also like the guys over at Dropbit, and I like Michael Dunworth over at Wire. So I'm happy to work with all these people. Would I work with BitGo? I mean, I don't know. The problem is I haven't been around long enough, so I don't come with the baggage of 10 years. I know where it comes from. It's to do with Belshi and the New York Agreement, right?
I know. So that whole so if, that's a great example. So if Bitco came to me right now, and I like that we're doing this, and said, Charlie, we want to sponsor your show, I would probably say yes for like the first quarter, and I'll tell you why. So I wasn't around during the New York Agreement stuff, so maybe I'm jaded because I really missed out on like the first chasm. What is it?
Is that when you were doing your? Was that when you were doing your time? Idiot.
Yeah, I missed that whole thing. I wasn't invited. I was like, didn't even know about it, like at all. The first New York agreement, the Hong Kong agreement, right? But I'll tell you what I do know about Bitco. Ben Davenport, who was the founder of Bitco, I remember sitting in the Facebook campus in 2013 with him when he was still at Facebook, and he was saying, Charlie, I love Bitcoin. I fucking love it. I want to leave Facebook and I want to like do something with Bitcoin. So I remember that conversation. And when he had founded Bitco, it was for Bitcoin infrastructure. Now, whatever happened, but I still feel like I owe a debt to someone like that. And so for me to say no because of what had happened, I don't know. That's where kind of my moral, I feel like, you know why I feel like I owe a debt? Because I live and work in this industry. I lose sleep at night if I ever have to go and work not in Bitcoin. I don't want to ever have to go get a real job ever again. And so if these companies have created this infrastructure and these jobs, that's our industry now. Like we live in it. And so that's why. Yeah, I guess I struggle with that too, but I guess we should be lucky that we even have sponsors that want to even sponsor our show, right?
No, they're lucky they have us. That's what they're lucky they have us. I
love that attitude.
They have us bring them customers. No, look, we are lucky. The thing, so I know Ben. I've met Ben a couple of times. Been to a dinner with him organised by Suna. I really like Ben. I've got a lot of time for him. I've reached out to him for a couple of times to help. I've only spoke to Mike once. I guess what it is that at different times in the Bitcoin history, like things have happened and you're either on the right side or the wrong side of history in that moment of time. Like that war, that battle, you know. And I actually think sometimes I think because I'm kind of new around here, I'm like the new guy, I sometimes look at things with a different lens. So when I look at the New York Agreement, if you forget Roger Vere's bullshit, I look at that and I think, I reckon there's some people there who genuinely, for the right reason, wanted to do the right thing. And I know like Jameson supported.
I think most people did, though. I think most people, even Jeff Garzik, I didn't think he had bad intent. I've known Jeff for so long. He doesn't have a bad blood in his body.
Yeah, well, so I know at one point Jameson, like he said on my podcast, he supported bigger blocks. There's people at different times who have supported bigger blocks, right? So when I was kind of following that thing, where it really stood out for me was when they had the New York Agreement and none of the devs went. They all boycotted it, and it was a closed door meeting. That was the point I went, okay, something here kind of sounds wrong. But dude, look, if I'd have started a company in 2014, 15, could I honestly say 100% hand on my heart when the New York Agreement happened that I wouldn't have been part of it, that I might have not said, actually, this seems like a good idea, 2 megabytes isn't a bad thing? I honestly can't say I wouldn't have. But what happens is people get on the wrong side, and then they're cast aside. Like, yeah, and I think Ben's fine, but I think maybe Mike's reputation took a bit of a hit with that. And I've never had a chance to talk to him about it.
I agree. When you dig into your positions, you end up digging yourself into a much worse hole, which is why I don't like labels.
Yeah, but some get out of it. Like Wences, I met him recently. I met him a few weeks ago in Uruguay. First time, great guy. He seems to have realized he got it wrong, called it wrong. Apologized if people have forgiven him. I've spoken to Eric Voorhees about it. He's very interested in the position of Eric. Like me and him don't agree on tokens and altcoins, right? That's fine. But I still really like Eric, and I like talking to him about libertarian stuff. And he's got a lot of shit. People are saying, you owe us an apology for the New York Agreement. And I could have this wrong. If Eric listens to it, feel free to reach out to me and tell me if you think I've got this wrong. But I think the reason Eric has never apologized is because I think his point is that at the time he thought he was right. So why apologize for doing what you thought was right at the time? But his reputation took a hit from that. But other reputations will take big hits. And some people went too far. Like Roger Vere's, his reputation obviously is just mud now. And I think some of that stuff happens. So when you get opportunities for sponsors, it's like, I would really have to think about someone like Bitco. I would probably, actually, I won't name names just to drop them in right now, but I can think of two or three people I would instantly contact and say, look, I've been approached by Bitco for a sponsor. What do you think?
Well, you should contact me, by the way. I'm more than happy.
You're really
more than happy to help you.
You just go with it. Take the money, Pete. No, I would pick a couple of very extreme, hardcore Bitcoiners and say, "What do you honestly think?" So someone else like blockchain.info would be another one. I imagine would be a challenge, but
see, I wouldn't allow as a moral. I won't allow any company that took an investment from Roger.
Right.
I just won't.
That's fair enough
at all. And that's not because of opinions or beliefs. That's just because of he hurt me. He hurt me personally, and so I'll forgive him when he forgives me. I guess we could say. Let's leave it at that. If he's listening
You're
to the show,
never gonna get that.
No, that's fine.
Like I've had,
but also I know for a fact that he exerts influence on all of his companies.
Of course he does, and
he's like the George Soros.
And his tribe of people. He like going into the RBTC subreddit. It's insane. Like the parroting, the things that people say. I mean, I just go in there to troll them these days. But yeah, so like the point being is, I have to really think about my sponsors, and I get shit for them as it is. I get shit for having Kraken because they have tokens. And I stand by their desire to do tokens, and the fact that they sponsor me and I can go around the world and make this amazing show and push Bitcoin forward, I'm cool with that. I get shit for having BlockFi as a sponsor because some people do not like the fact that it is a custodial interest account that you have with them. It's not your keys, not your Bitcoin. But I speak to other Bitcoiners who are saying, well, you need financial products in the Bitcoin industry, and some of them will be custodial. So the Bitcoin purity test is hard to pass, and I don't feel the need to be Bitcoin pure. I feel that I need.
Oh, you make your own line.
Is it net good? Like, is what I'm doing net good for Bitcoin? Undoubtedly, yes. So all the other critical shit I get, it doesn't matter because I know myself it's net good. I know if it's the most downloaded Bitcoin show, if it's doing 300,000 downloads a month, there are people who like it. So they're enjoying the show. I also know it's listened to by a range of people from absolute beginners to like OGs. Like I know people will get in touch who are real hardcore Bitcoiners and say, oh, I listened to your show with Zaba, or I listened to your show with Charlie. It was great. So I'm also cool that I'm producing with content for the right group of people. I'm happy with my choice of sponsors, but I will tell you something that is kind of interesting, Charlie, because people are like, oh, you're just a marketing guy and you're just trying to like make money off Bitcoin and you're not genuine. So in the last year, I'd have to like total it up, but I'll give you a broad range. I've turned down anything from 500,000 to $1 million in sponsorship, accumulative, right? So I probably couldn't have taken them all along because I wouldn't have had enough slots. But I've certainly turned down that much in sponsorship from different companies. I mean, there was one token that they wanted to come on the show, which you can't pay to do. They wanted a sponsor and they wanted some tweets, and we were talking $200,000, and I had to turn it down because it was a fucking token. So, I mean, I turned down a Lambo. So, yeah,
really?
Well, yeah, because I couldn't work with this company because I don't believe in what they're doing. As soon as I start talking about it on the show, everyone's going to be like, what the fuck is this bullshit? So I had to turn it down. It's a Bitcoin show. There's no slots available for tokens.
In mainstream media, we don't often see articles that are blatantly wrong because it's well, I don't really know why. We see a lot of corrections and retractions. Lately, we've seen with crypto media just articles that are just blatantly just wrong.
Yeah.
And I think, and I hate to say it, but I think even the best crypto news source, we want double verification. So if I see an article on CoinDesk, if I don't see it somewhere else, I may not believe it, or I may say, hey, like, I want to see the rest of the story. I think we don't trust. What's the future of podcasts? Are we going to become now the where people look to for information? You like journalism, but I'm very quickly to say that I don't like. Technically, I probably am a journalist, because I'm in this doing this show now. But I don't like to to do a news or journalistic show, right? I'm more of I like to do entertainment. You know, when they ask me to make speeches at conferences, the first thing I say is, listen, I'm an entertainer. So if I get on stage, I'm going to make your audience laugh, cry, have fun. So what do you want me to talk about? I like doing that. But where do you see us?
That's a funny one. So I love that one. I tell you why I love that, because very early on when I was like doing the show and I'd have people like Roger on it, and people were like, you're a journalist and you're giving a platform to a scammer. And then now I get, when I say I'm a journalist, people go, you're not a journalist. You haven't got the experience.
Yeah.
So you're a journalist when they don't like what you're doing, and then you're not a journalist when they don't like what you're doing. So like they pick and choose. I say now I am a journalist. I happily say I'm a journalist, but I admit that I am not like a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. I'm not like a writer for the Wall Street Journal, but I think I investigate things. I think I look into topics and I try and find answers. So that for me is journalism. And I'm definitely in the very early days of learning my trade. Now, we're a different type of news source. We're not breaking news, right? We are topics, and it depends on the show I'm making. So when I'm out in Bolivia doing a show about Evo Morales, and I've spent 2 days there speaking to people, and I'm trying to get my questions together to construct an interview, which also has my intro with explains what I think, that to me is a piece of journalism. You might not like it, but it's definitely higher quality journalism than tabloid. We have a thing called The Sun in the UK. So I would say I'm a more credible journalist than them. And I would say I'm a less credible journalist than maybe some of the best writers for Reuters. I'm somewhere in between those.
Am I journalism?
Well, we'll come to that. Let me just finish my point. When I did the Mt. Gox stuff, I would say that's journalism. I would say when I did an interview with you, Charlie, and I'm finding out about your life in, what life was like for you in prison, I think that's both journalism and entertainment. Like, I'm entertained by the story as I'm entertained by watching about prisons on Netflix, but it's also journalism because I'm finding something out, right? I can't say whether I think you're a journalist. I think that's for you to answer. I was like, think about the shows you make. Okay, so I've got your list of shows in front of me, right? When you're doing a show, let's say Andreas Antonopoulos on how Bitcoin defeats the control over money, that's not entertainment. That's journalism. You might be entertained by it, but that's journalism. It's news which people should know about.
I don't even know what the definition of journalism is.
Well, I think that I think journalism and entertainment overlap. I mean, look, we've got war potentially breaking out up in the Middle East.
Yeah, what the hell's going on with that today?
But dude, like, everyone's going to the news for entertainment. Like, it's this weird world where like war's entertaining, right? It's like, fuck, the news is on, right? What's CNBC saying? What's the Sky saying? What's BBC saying? And you're attracted to it. It's news, it's journalism, but you're entertained by it in this weird, perverse way. So I think journalism and entertainment can overlap, and I think there are forms of journalism which, I mean, it depends what what's the definition of entertainment? I think entertainment can exist on its own and not be journalism, but can journalism ever not be entertainment?
Hey, have you ever been approached by anyone to like do a mashup podcast type thing where they take bits and pieces of your and other show?
Yes, I've had people come and they want to use parts of my show in other things. I just say no.
So I always say no, but I feel like it's becoming more frequent, and there are more professional production companies that want to do these mashup shows now. And at first I was like, well, why would I do that? Because it takes listeners away from me. But it's a form of flattery, because to go on what you say, these mashup shows now are realizing that people are looking at our shows like their primary source of information and entertainment. And so, you have a lot of shows that come out on a daily basis that are still long form. And God bless those podcasters, because I struggle with even doing 2 episodes a week. So I don't know how they do 5. But now, and I've not said yes to these mashup show, but if these mashup shows now are becoming the de facto place where someone's going to listen to every morning for their daily updates and news and entertainment, and then someone's taking a 2-minute clip of every our episode, is that a net benefit for us or a net negative? What do you think?
I'm not keen. Do you know
Yeah,
what?
I'm
I'm
still
not
not
keen.
keen too,
I
but
tell you, I don't want, like, I want, ideally, when someone listens to one of my interviews, hopefully if they enjoy it, I want to listen to the whole
context.
thing. Yeah, because it's a body of work. I don't want bits chopped out of it. And I don't want to give people part of my work. If someone, but then at the same time, if someone stole it, if somebody just went on and cut about it, I mean, I wouldn't give a fuck. But I just, I don't know. I'm entirely focused on the thing that I'm trying to create, which I haven't actually figured out yet, which is about me and where I want to take this. So that takes me to another question for you, Charlie. You're doing. I wonder if you'll go through what I went through. Are you feeling the draw to do stuff outside of crypto and Bitcoin?
You know, I do think about that now that I have kind of a system for this show now, but I don't like I would like to do a show that's a very local show, like where I live, Sarasota. I would like to do like a Sarasota show, just the local like hummings and goings and politics and stuff like that. And I feel like I could do a good show, but I don't know if I'd be able to do it as well as I do this show. I don't know if I'd be the best at it, but at the same time, someone else did it in Tampa. So someone else launched a podcast called The Zest.
Huh?
And it's like a basically local Tampa show. And I like it. I listen to it. It's like 45 minutes, but I found out that it actually was created and produced by the local public radio network. And so that's why it's such a great show, is because they produce it. Um, but at the same time, I don't know. You've you took that step with Defiance, and
Hmm.
you're doing a really good job at it, and you're getting like amazing guests, and you're doing this show, but like you said earlier, that sometimes the downloads are not where you want them to be. um do you think you'll continue to branch off and do more shows? I feel like Untold Stories can be any industry. So if I were to
Yeah.
branch this off, I don't know if I'd be the host of the Untold Stories of the garbage industry. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I'd be
You
that
might be.
person. Could be. I don't know.
Well, so I mean, ultimately, do I think in 10 years I will be doing a? I don't know if in 10 years I'll be doing a Bitcoin podcast. My hope is that, like, I see everything conversion to just me doing hopefully a podcast under my own name, where one week I might have Nick Szabo and the next week I might have James Hetfield from Metallica. Right. Ultimately, I just want to get to the stories and the interviews that really interest me. The best interviews that I find are the ones where you're really into it, right? Let me ask you another question. How much prep are you doing for your interviews? Are you prepping for all of them or some of them? Are you doing different levels of prep?
I have a system. I
Okay.
don't like to write the show. I don't pre-write any of the questions except for the first one, the first big one. But at the same time, I do do a few hours of research before each guest, even if I know them. I probably prepare about 8 or 9 pages of documents, and then I actually have like on my desk here at the studio. So I operate out of a physical studio here in Sarasota 4 days a week. I'm in the studio here. And here right now, and Wayne will print for me like 8 or 9 pages, and I'll have them like spread across the desk, and I have highlights and I have circles. And so I'm constantly, that's just kind of the way I like to do it. Now, Courtney for Christmas got me this like Sony e-paper thing. So it's because she knows that they would make my life more efficient. So it's basically, it's the size, it's an 8.5 by 11 piece of digital paper that's made by Sony. And now I can do everything I just described without printing. So I'll still do a lot of
Nice.
that research, but I don't, for the same reason I don't like to write my speeches. I'll get on stage. I've done TED Talks, and TED wants you to write all your speeches, and they want to like pre-approve it. And I think I've done one of the only TED Talks in the history of TED Talks where I have not written my speech, and somehow they still let me do it. I just don't like to do it. I don't like to limit myself.
So I have, it depended on the guest. So Nick Szabo, I'm totally prepping for that. I don't want to miss anything out. And I've got 3-4 pages of questions or bullet points. And then if it's a different guest, say I was going to interview, say Adam Back. With Adam, I won't have the questions, but I'll have the topics. Right. These are the topics I want to get through. And then the third type is where I just don't have anything. And this is one of them, Charlie. So I know I can sit down with
Yeah, this was
you.
a great
And
episode. I have to prepare.
well, I know with you, Charlie, I can sit down for 2 or 3 hours and just talk, right? I know you, you're a friend, I know what you're about. I can just shoot the shit. I mean, we can go into any subject. We could go into sports and politics or anything, and I could just talk to you. What I'm getting at is these are my favorite ones. The ones where, it's not that I don't have to prep. I just don't have to have questions in front of me and worry about the next subject. Ultimately, I want to get to the point whereby they're all the interviews I'm doing. The ones where I can just sit down.
Really?
It's about a subject I like. So it might be Bitcoin because I like Bitcoin, right? Or it might be boxing because I like boxing. Or it might be a footballer because I like football. Or it might be James Hetfield because I like heavy metal. It doesn't, like, I'm just in my comfort zone having an interesting conversation about the things I like. That's where I want to get to. I do also, though, like covering human stories, right? So what I found recently, there's a guy on Twitter called Josh McGruff. We've always just talked. He's a crypto guy. He was in the army. He's got a daughter who's got Down syndrome. And I was in Ohio and I was heading to Indianapolis, and I knew he was up that way. And I was like, dude, can I just come and see you? Maybe we'll make a show. And he said yes. So I ended up making a show in his kitchen with him and his wife, with his daughter running around, just finding out about, what is it like raising a child with Down syndrome? What are the things we're not aware of? What's schooling like? What's the medical system like? I kind of want to do more of that. So I've come into contact with people recently who I've wanted to interview who aren't known for anything. So when I was flying out to Argentina, the lady behind me on the plane, I ended up talking to her for about half an hour. Her husband had died 3 months ago. Yeah, terrible. I can't remember, it was either Parkinson's or Alzheimer's. She looked after him for 6 years. He died. And then the first thing she did was she booked a trip to the Antarctic. She was like, right, I've always wanted to go. I'm going to go and see that. And I thought, God, you know what? You'd be fascinating to interview. Like, I want to know the story of you and your husband, how you met, like what you went through. What was it like looking after him? Now he's gone. What are you thinking about the future? I think that would be a really interesting interview as well. So I don't know. I'm getting really drawn into people's stories as well.
I love people's stories.
So Charlie, I'm conscious of time. I had a bunch of things I wanted to talk to you about. We're gonna have to do this again.
We should do it again. Let's do it every, I don't know, 6 months or 50 episodes or whenever you hit a milestone.
I've got to come out to Florida soon anyway. But I did want to ask you something else. We've only ended up covering trolls and podcasting content, but I actually want to ask you something else. So you've been in this for 9-10 years, right? You're at the very start, pretty much when all of the Bitcoin stuff was kicking off. You're here now where it's a very different world. Firstly, what do you make of it all? And where do you think we're going to be in 10 years time? And I know that's a massive question, but you're one of the people who's been around for most of this.
I need to take a minute to think about an answer.
Yeah.
I'll attack the first answer. What do I think about all this? You're right. It's almost a decade in Bitcoin. And this is a situation where I'm not going to use the word crypto because there's no decade in crypto yet. We're coming up on, for at least my anniversary of a decade in Bitcoin. Next year will be my anniversary of 10 years in the space. And to say that I'm only 30 years old and I've been in any space for 10 years is unbelievable. And I guess I'm very honored and grateful and thankful to the whole community for allowing me to come back into it, right? The community could have very easily said no just by not listening to the show or not allowing me to have even a platform. So I will say that we're a community that does allow second chances. Now, in terms of Bitcoin, if in 2011 you asked me what would Bitcoin look like in 2021 or 2020, what would I say? I would probably say something like, in 10 years, everyone's going to be using Bitcoin. We just don't know about it. It'll be a complete financial revolution. Boy, was I fucking wrong about that. It takes time. It takes a long time. However, so if you were to say to me, if you had a time machine, if you came to me in 10 years and Peter, you showed up in my dream and you said, first of all, if I was dreaming about you, I'd have a serious discussion with my wife. But if you came to me in a dream 10 years ago and you said, Charlie, my name is Peter. You have no idea who the hell I am. But in 10 years, this is what our industry is going to look like. And you show me just screenshots in a short film, I wouldn't believe you. I would say completely, outlandish. It's wrong. But now being where we are to what we went through in the past 10 years, I'm like, wow, I can't believe how far we've come. I don't know how, like, does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does.
It's like, I guess I'm happy with where we've come and how. So in 2012 or 2013, this guy came up on a Reddit post, and I'm always bringing this up, and he wrote this crazy story about like what Bitcoin's going to look like in like 30 years from now. And he even outlined what the Bitcoin price is going to be every like year. And just so far, he's been so accurate. And he's like, I came from the future. And this guy wrote this Reddit post, and he had like no other post, and he's never written or been anywhere since. And, he said that we're all going to be living in citadels in 20 years, and the price of Bitcoin will become so high that we won't even be denominating it in dollars anymore. And he talks about like which Bitcoin celebrities will be shot first and like crazy stuff.
Sure.
But so far he's been like accurate. It's kind of scary. You have to read this thing.
Yeah, send it to me.
Yeah, I have to find it. I always go back and read it. But also, you know what we used to do, but no one does it anymore? Go back and Google in 2013, in 2012, and in 2014, I wrote a holiday message to the whole Bitcoin space. And I would write these like New Year's messages about like how far we've come and where we're going. And I mean, if you read these messages, I go back and there's such great content like here. So this was a message I wrote this 7 years ago. I wrote this 7 years ago, and this was 2000 and this was New Year's 2012. Going into 2012, I think, or going into 2013, I said here, I'll read it to you. I said, season's greetings. Thinking about the year that just ended, I cannot be thankful enough to be a part of a community that does not discriminate, does not hate, be sorry for the trolls, and does not care where you came from, who you are, what your background. All of us work 24/7 with our blood, sweat, and tears to make this world a better place, a place where Bitcoin prevails. So that first paragraph, think about that for a second. I didn't mention crypto or anything else. This was still a very ideological year. This was when everyone in the space, this was here for ideology. We loved Bitcoin for what it could do for the world. And then I went into it. I said, look how far we've gotten just in the past year, 2012. It's insane. We've been through the fire pit and came out on the top. They tried to scam us, cheat us, hack us, discredit us, and shut us down. Where are we now? The price is at $13. This time last year, it was hovering around $5. Market depth is doing much better, and now cost more money to manipulate the market, an unbelievable sign of strength. We have more exchanges to buy Bitcoin and more cheap, safe, and secure ways to buy Bitcoin all over the world, from New York City to the Caribbean islands, Kazakhstan, Finland, Brazil, and more. Now there are hundreds of new Bitcoin companies and startups. New sites that accept Bitcoin are emerging every day, like WordPress. That was the biggest, these were the days when WordPress accepting Bitcoin was like top news. No longer are we considered juvenile hacker kids looking to launder money and buy drugs online. Meanwhile, this was before I got arrested. We have been credited as a real movement tied to real beliefs and ideologies that have been around hundreds of years. Having said that, I want to convey to you how happy I am and how thankful I am to be part of this with you all. I cannot ask for a better team of people to share this ride with. To infinity and beyond. Happy holidays.
Yeah.
And then right after that, someone said, these are the goals for next year. 4 times more users, owners, savers of Bitcoin. We want a price stable with low volatility around $30. And we want at least 2 more major announcements on par with the French bank and WordPress accepting Bitcoin. And then we'd also like a handful of new high-quality introductory videos explaining Bitcoin Oh my God. And then someone tipped me 0.1 Bitcoin for that 7 years ago. I wonder how I can get that money.
0.1 Bitcoin. Yeah, I mean, because, what was it, 37? So you got $3.70 for that.
Yeah.
And now it's like nearly $1,000.
Oh, man. Oh, shit. I got to find that. This was a tip bot.
Amazing. Well, that's cool.
So, I mean, those were now people wrote these huge comments about what their belief was. and how the years went. And then I did that again in 2013. So going back and reading those early holiday messages and seeing like what was our community, and you know where I posted that? On our Bitcoin, because that was the only place, like that was Reddit. And I haven't read or posted on Bitcoin Reddit in years. It's just toxic wasteland right now.
Yeah. Well, Reddit's just a pain in the ass. Can't see, unusable. Wow.
I know.
Interesting that, and I guess
Crazy.
But I guess the objectives for the next year will be very similar, right? It's more places to buy. It's hopefully more places to buy with less KYC. More people will understand privacy. But I imagine the kind of goals and objectives are very similar. It's just always hearing the price back then. You know, we're up to now $37 from $15 or whatever it is. Just like, Jesus.
It was all relative.
Yeah, I know. I'd love to have been around. Well, I say I'd love to have been around then, Charlie, but I do think like being new allows me to come at it with a different lens. But,
yeah, you're not jaded. Most people around in those early days have left. A lot of them have left. People that you don't know about, that I don't know about. And so I don't know if I didn't go through prison for those 2 years, if I would still even be here today, because that was like, I was like Michael Jackson, like my body was frozen for 2 years, you know? So I came out on the other side, but like as if I went into, you know what I mean? So who knows?
Who knows, man?
Who knows? But I'm definitely as excited, if not more excited, going into this year than I ever was. Why? I don't know. I just have a feeling. And the way my body works is that my body knows things before my brain knows them. So if I have anxiety, before I even know why I have anxiety, my stomach is starting to feel weird. So I'm more excited. Like I sit here with you, like in the first days of 2020, with never felt more optimistic and excited right now than I've ever felt before. Never. I mean, I go back to the New Year's of the past years, and the only year I was more happy was the year I got married. But other than that, like this is the year that I think I'm so excited about what will come. I think we've trimmed a lot of the fat and we've become leaner. And now we're going to move forward in a very, very, very positive way. Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening. New episodes of Untold Stories are released every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 a.m. EST on untoldstories.com. Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Untold Stories is produced by Jason Yanowitz, Michael Ippolito, Reed Hannaford, and Riley Silbert of Blockworks Group. Our account executives are Gina DeFelice and Julie Muroff. Our content is written by Kathy Zolo, Ronnie Tishner, and Scott Offer. Special thanks to Wayne Dallaire from Jump Dog Audio Productions. And of course, I'm your host, Charlie Shrem. You can follow me on Twitter at Charlie Shrem to continue the conversation. Send me some messages, feedback, or anything you want to say. And remember, please give some love to my sponsors, and I'll see you next week. Remember, strength in numbers and information is power.